In a world addicted to striving, it almost sounds like a crime to let go. Everywhere we look, we are encouraged to push, to hustle, to force things into place. If something doesn't work, try harder. If someone walks away, chase. If a plan collapses, rebuild it faster. But what if the Stoics were right? What if inner peace begins the moment we stop forcing, the moment we surrender not in defeat, but in wisdom? The Stoics, those ancient philosophers who lived in the heart of empires and exile, who wrote by candlelight and spoke in silence, understood something modern minds have forgotten. That real power is found not in grasping but in releasing. In this series, we'll walk through 10 Stoic lessons that invite you to return to that forgotten strength, the strength of restraint, the calm of clarity, the freedom of letting go. The first lesson is the most fundamental. Let go of what you can't control. Epictetus said it simply, some things are up to us, and some are not. We can spend our lives trying to twist fate, manipulate people, and force reality to fit our expectations, or we can reclaim our energy by focusing on what truly belongs to us. Our response, our effort, our character. So many of our anxieties come from trying to manage what was never ours to carry. We try to control the outcome of a conversation, the opinion of others, the timing of success. We try to make people stay who are meant to go, force clarity when silence is what we need. But the Stoic doesn't waste time shouting at the rain. He learns to walk with an umbrella. He recognizes that real strength is not found in controlling the storm but in staying steady within it. There is no freedom in grasping. There is only exhaustion. And once you release what doesn't belong to you, what's left is peace. Closely tied to that is the second Stoic lesson. Don't force timing, trust the rhythm of nature. Epictetus reminds us that no great thing is created suddenly. We forget that the universe has its own pace. A tree doesn't rush to grow. A river doesn't sprint to the ocean. Nature unfolds slowly, methodically, beautifully. But in our modern age, we confuse urgency with importance. We feel like if something doesn't happen now, it never will. We try to accelerate relationships, projects, even healing. But the Stoic waits, not with passivity but with presence. He plants the seed, waters it faithfully, and trusts the timing of the harvest. Trusting timing doesn't mean sitting still. It means moving in alignment. It means understanding that every season has its purpose, and sometimes rest is as productive as motion. If you're trying to force progress, ask yourself, are you moving in flow or in fear? The Stoic chooses flow. And in that flow, things happen not when we force them, but when we are ready to receive them. The third lesson follows naturally. Accept delays as divine detours. Seneca teaches us that obstacles are not the enemy, they are the path. But to the impatient heart, a delay feels like rejection. A paused plan feels like punishment. The modern mind is programmed to equate waiting with wasting. But what if waiting is a form of wisdom? What if the delay is not a detour but a protection? The Stoic doesn't panic when things don't happen on his schedule. He looks deeper. He asks, what is this delay revealing in me? What weakness is it exposing? What lesson is it offering? Sometimes, we aren't waiting for life to catch up, we're being given space to grow into the person who can handle what's coming. Peace isn't found in pushing the timeline, it's found in honoring the process. Maybe that thing you wanted so badly wasn't to know it. Maybe the door closed not to punish you, but to prepare you. The Stoic trusts that the universe isn't random, that every delay has design. The fourth Stoic principle strikes a nerve in the age of online validation. Release the need to be understood. One of the most invisible forms of forcing is trying to manage how others see us. We want to explain ourselves. We want to correct misunderstandings. We want to be seen for our intentions. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if someone does wrong, it's because they don't understand. And if they understood fully, they wouldn't. This means that misunderstanding is part of the human experience. You can't avoid it. The only way to never be misread is to never speak, never act, never stand for anything. But the Stoic walks in integrity, not in image. He lets his character speak, even if others misinterpret his silence. The desire to be understood is natural, but when it becomes a craving, it becomes a chain. Let people think what they want. Let them guess, gossip, misunderstand. Your job is not to make them see clearly. Your job is to keep seeing clearly yourself. Peace begins when you stop performing. And finally, for this opening section, the fifth Stoic lesson is this. Let people go without chasing closure. We long for final conversations. We wait for the apology. We rehearse what we'll say if we ever get the chance. But most closure doesn't come from someone else. It comes from within. Epictetus said, when someone walks away, let them go. The door they close is also closing a burden. It is tempting to force a moment to write the final chapter ourselves, but often we're better off leaving the page blank. Not every story needs a perfect ending. Not every goodbye needs to be spoken. You don't need the conversation to move on. You don't need their explanation to heal. You don't need to be hurt to become whole. The Stoic lets go with dignity. He doesn't beg for clarity. He builds it inwardly, because peace doesn't come when someone else says sorry. It comes when you decide to stop waiting. There is a sacred silence within the Stoic life that often goes unnoticed. A silence not of inactivity, but of alignment. In that silence, the Stoic finds space to breathe, to think, to recalibrate. We live in a culture that praises burnout, that worships productivity to the point of depletion. But the Stoics knew that forcing progress when the soul is tired leads not to mastery, but to misalignment. This brings us to the sixth lesson. Don't push through burnout, withdraw to regroup. Even Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor with the weight of an empire on his shoulders, retreated into himself for renewal. He journaled. He practiced stillness. He didn't interpret rest as weakness, but as wisdom. There is strength in knowing when to stop, when to pause, when to say, right now I don't need to fix anything. I need to restore something. The modern mind resists this because it's addicted to proving itself. We measure worth by how much we do. But the Stoic reverses the equation. He asks, not, what can I produce today, but what kind of person am I becoming today? And sometimes, becoming better requires resting deeper. Stillness is not absence, it is preparation. From that place of stillness comes resilience. And resilience is not toughness, it is trust. That leads to the seventh lesson. Embrace uncertainty as a training ground. Uncertainty is not chaos, it is a classroom. Life does not hand us a roadmap. It hands us a compass and asks us to walk in faith. The Stoic doesn't need to know what's coming next. He only needs to know how he will meet it. Epictetus reminds us that external events are beyond us, but our mindset is not. So when the path gets foggy, when the outcome is unclear, the Stoic doesn't panic. He anchors deeper. He sharpens the one thing he controls. His inner posture. Uncertainty is not a threat to peace, it's a test of it. And when you train yourself to stand still in the storm, clarity eventually finds you. Most people wait for certainty before they act. The Stoic acts with clarity of character, not clarity of circumstances. He walks even when the path is not fully visible, trusting that the next step will appear as it needs to. In this way, the unknown becomes a gifter, opportunity to grow trust, depth, and calm. This naturally leads us into the eighth lesson, one that cuts through the noise of ego and desperation. There is a certain posture of the soul that attracts the right things, not by pleading for them, but by becoming the kind of person that is ready for them. The Stoic does not chase what is not in alignment with his virtue. He does not plead for affection, validation, or opportunity. He prepares. He sharpens. He becomes. What is meant for you doesn't need to be chased. It needs to be received. If something requires you to beg, be it love, a job, or recognition, it is not aligned with your inner peace, because anything you have to force will eventually break you, and anything that's truly yours will meet you in stillness. The Stoic understands this subtle truth. Desperation repels, but presence attracts. When you are deeply rooted in your own principles, what flows toward you is what was always meant to find you. What you don't need to force is what frees you. Underlying all these insights is one powerful shift, a move away from outcome obsession toward a life built on principle. That's the ninth lesson. Detach from outcomes, live by principles. The modern world worships results, metrics, likes, wins, recognition, but the Stoic doesn't ask, did it work? He asks, was I virtuous? Because results lie outside your full control, but virtue that belongs entirely to you. When you detach from the outcome, you become impossible to manipulate. You're no longer a puppet to praise or criticism. You are no longer broken by failure or inflated by success. You live from your values. You act from integrity, and you let the consequences land where they may. Seneca taught this with his life. He didn't just preach virtue, he practiced it, even when it cost him everything. Living by principles gives you a still center, a clarity that cannot be shaken by external noise. You stop forcing reality to reward you and start focusing on being the kind of person who would be ready for any reward. Outcome obsession creates stress. but principled living creates peace. These 4 lessons: learning to rest without guilt, walking calmly into uncertainty, attracting by alignment, not desperation, and focusing on principle over pressure form the inner framework of Stoic peace. They are the quiet architecture of a life that doesn't just look calm on the outside, but feels grounded on the inside. A Stoic doesn't wait for the world to give him peace. He creates it. One clear thought, one aligned action, one surrendered breath at a time. And when the noise of the world rises, he doesn't force his way through it. He listens. He pauses. He returns to the stillness that never left him. We now arrive at the final threshold of this Stoic journey. The place where true peace is not merely practiced but where the outer discipline of restraint gives birth to the inner silence of freedom. This final descent into stillness requires us to confront the deepest roots of our unrest, our attachment to ego, our fear of death, and our illusion that we must earn what is already within. The Stoics were not interested in surface-level tranquility. They aimed for something far more radical. To become immune to the chaos of the world not by avoiding it, but by seeing through it. That kind of peace cannot be forced. It must be remembered. And so we begin this final passage with one of the most misunderstood and transformative truths. Other people's opinions are not your responsibility. There is a quiet kind of slavery that many live under, slavery to the perceptions of others. We mold our words, dress our lives, censor our light, all in hopes of being seen in a certain way. We crave recognition, we avoid disapproval, and in doing so, we slowly dissolve our authenticity. But the Stoic cuts the chain clean. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly: we love ourselves more than other people, yet care more about their opinions than our own. It's a bitter irony. We betray our own intuition to maintain an image. We shrink to fit someone else's mold. But what do we lose in the process? The Stoic answers: we lose our peace. When you try to manage someone else's perception of you, you enter a game you can never win. Their opinions are shaped by their pain, their projections, their biases. You cannot fix the lens through which they see you. You can only clear the mirror through which you see yourself. When you detach from the need to be admired or even understood, you find something far greater: integrity, a grounded sense of who you are, even when the world misunderstands. And that is unshakable. From this detachment comes another form of liberation: the release of fear. Not these surface-level fears of daily life, but the ultimate fear. The fear of death. Most people avoid it. They distract from it. They pretend it isn't coming. But the Stoic meets it head-on, not with panic, but with reverence. Memento mori, remember, you must die. Not to darken your joy, but to deepen it. Not to provoke despair, but to pierce illusion. Death is not the enemy. It is the mirror. It clarifies what truly matters. When you live as though you have infinite time, you waste it. You delay apologies. You postpone joy. You tolerate things that wound your soul. But when you remember to truly remember it, everything comes into focus. Petty arguments dissolve. Gratitude intensifies. Courage rises. The Stoic doesn't obsess over death, but he allows it to instruct him. He lets the brevity of life, birth, urgency, purpose, simplicity. If you knew you only had 1 year left to live, what would fall away? What would remain? That is your path. That is your peace. Because when you no longer fear death, you no longer need to force life. And perhaps the final lesson, the most liberating of all, is this: you already have everything you need to begin. You are not missing the final puzzle piece. You are not waiting on the perfect circumstances. The Stoic refuses to stall his evolution behind excuses. Seneca wrote that it is not that life is short, but that we waste so much of it. And much of that waste comes from hesitation, from the false belief that clarity, confidence, or courage are prerequisites to action. They are born through action. You do not wait for readiness. You build it. You do not wait to feel fearless. You walk forward while afraid. The Stoic understands that perfection is a trap. It whispers, wait until everything is right, while life quietly slips away. Begin now. Begin clumsily. Begin imperfectly, because beginning is the only way forward. And as you take small, deliberate steps toward virtue, toward your values, toward stillness, you discover the truth. Everything you sought in external achievements already lives within you. Peace, purpose, power. They are not destinations. They are foundations. This is where the journey ends, not in some grand victory, but in a quiet return, a return to presence, a return to the part of you that never needed to force anything in the first place. The Stoics never promised comfort. They never offered a life without hardship. What they offered was something greater: a way to walk through all of life, joy and sorrow, gain and loss with dignity, with clarity, and with peace. And that peace comes not from chasing more, but from surrendering wisely. You don't need to fight the river. You only need to stop resisting its current. When you do, you'll find that the river has always been flowing in your favor, not because it gave you what you wanted, but because it made you who you are. After shedding the burdens of control, ego, and false urgency, we arrive at something even deeper, a restructured self, a quieter self, not emptied, but reoriented. Here is where Stoicism transitions from thought to being, from insight to identity. The Stoic life, at its core, is not about cold detachment or emotionless distance as many mistakenly assume. It is about alignment. A soul that no longer leaks itself into the world hoping for return. A soul that is rooted in virtue, in clarity, in stillness so strong that circumstances cannot crack it. This form of living is rare. It is not loud. It does not seek to be known. It is not built on performances, explanations, or even declarations. It is built like an ancient temple, brick by brick, practice by practice, unseen to many, unshakable by most, and its foundation is not found in force, but in flow. You begin to realize that life is no longer about chasing peace, but about noticing where you've been interrupting it. When you are no longer trying to prove your worth, to race time, or to manipulate outcomes, the world feels different. You stop needing to control conversations. You stop rehearsing your value. You start listening more. You find yourself pausing longer before responding. You feel less pressure to jump in, fix, explain, justify. You develop an internal quietness that doesn't need to be expressed to be real. And from that stillness, right action begins to emerge. You begin acting not from fear or need, but from virtue, wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. The 4 Stoic pillars. These are not abstract virtues. They are tools, anchors. They turn into questions. You ask yourself daily, is this wise? Is this brave? Is this measured? Is this fair? When your actions come from that place, there is very little left to regret. There is no chaos to chase, and no peace to earn. Only a daily choice to stay rooted in who you are becoming. In this space, decisions become clearer. The need to control outcomes fades. You begin to trust that, even if the outcome is uncertain, the action was aligned. And that's enough. This is a far cry from how we're taught to live. Most of us were trained to measure success by results. How fast, how visible, how loud. But Stoicism offers a different scorecard. It says, the quality of your action matters more than its applause. The dignity of your process is more important than the reaction it provokes. Imagine how much lighter life becomes when you are no longer asking, will this be approved? And instead ask, is this aligned with who I want to be? That single shift moves your power from the hands of the world back into your own chest. It returns you to self-respect, to moral clarity, to a kind of peace that cannot be bargained for. And perhaps the most surprising fruit of this path is joy. Not a superficial happiness that depends on convenience, but a subtle, steady joy that emerges from coherence, when who you are privately and who you are publicly finally match. When your energy is no longer wasted on forcing, explaining, chasing, or defending, that energy returns to you, and it becomes joy. Not excitement, not stimulation, but joy that exists even when the room is quiet, the future is uncertain, and the results are unknown. It is a joy rooted in being clean inside, in knowing that you are living with intention, that you are choosing peace. Not because everything is easy, but because everything you've let go of was never truly yours to carry. You begin to understand that surrender is not weakness, it is mastery. The moment you no longer need life to bend to your will, you realize life is already beautiful in ways you couldn't see when you were trying so hard to rearrange it. This is the hidden reward of the Stoic life, that you begin by letting go of control, but what you gain in return is something infinitely more valuable. Inner stability, that you give up force and discover flow, that you stop chasing peace and realize it's been waiting for you behind the noise of your own resistance. Stoicism doesn't promise perfection. It doesn't promise immunity from heartbreak or tragedy. What it promises is that if you live with integrity, if you act with reason, if you root yourself in values, if you stop forcing, you will find yourself, over time, building a life that does not shake when the world does. And, in today's world, that is nothing short of a miracle. There is a stillness that cannot be shaken, even when the earth trembles. That stillness is not found in the world. It is not given by others. It is not earned through achievement. It is cultivated, moment by moment, in the quiet interior of a life lived in alignment, and it is only revealed to those who stop forcing. This is what the Stoics knew, and what modern life has forgotten. That peace is not something we win through control, but something we remember through surrender. We began this journey with the idea that life cannot be forced, not its timing, not its relationships, not its rhythms. And now, we arrive at something even deeper. Not only can life not be forced, it doesn't need to be, because everything you truly need, everything your soul has been craving, stability, clarity, courage, love, is already possible within you the moment you let go of what never belonged to you. When you let go of the need to control what you cannot control, you get back your power. When you stop rushing timing, you begin to see the beauty of process. When you release your obsession with being understood, you rediscover the joy of being authentic. When you stop begging for connection, you begin to attract what is in alignment. When you detach from outcomes, you begin to live from principle. When you accept uncertainty, you stop fearing change. When you face death, you begin to live. And when you stop waiting for the perfect moment, you begin to live the only moment that ever truly exists. The 10 Stoic lessons we've explored are not simply steps on a path. They are mirrors. Each one reflects a part of ourselves that is already wise, already steady, already free. We do not need to add more. We need to uncover what's been covered by noise, by fear, by cultural programming that taught us to strive for peace instead of surrendering to it. Stoicism is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming unshakable, not because we are cold, but because we are clear, not because we avoid pain, but because we move through it with grace. The Stoic doesn't suppress life. He shapes himself within it. That is the shift the modern world desperately needs. A generation that stops measuring life by how fast it moves, how much it gains, or how loudly it performs, and starts measuring it by how deeply it aligns, how honestly it lives, and how calmly it lets go. That kind of life doesn't make headlines, but it leaves legacies. Because a quiet person who knows who they are can shake the ground more than a loud person who doesn't. Stillness is louder than noise. Integrity is louder than charisma. And letting go, when done with wisdom, is louder than any forced grip. You do not have to force your life into shape. Life is not a machine to be engineered. It is a mystery to be walked, a rhythm to be felt, a gift to be received. The Stoics remind us that our job is not to control the river. Our job is to learn how to swim with strength, float with wisdom, and let the current carry us toward the person we were always meant to become. So, pause here. Breathe deeply. Reflect slowly. Ask yourself, what have I been forcing lately? What weight have I been gripping with anxiety, urgency, or fear? What if I just let it go? Not out of apathy, but out of alignment. Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Not out of defeat, but out of quiet power. Because the moment you let go of forcing, you open the door to flow. And flow is where peace lives. The Stoic does not chase it. He becomes it. And so can you.